Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today I'm joined by Twan and we're going to be discussing the first 5 stages of the Tour de France Femmes, and we're going to be recapping the rest of the Tour de France for men after the last time we spoke with you when Wout van Aert won the 4th stage in the yellow jersey. Twan, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Been enjoying a lot of the racing recently.
Yes, so have I, and I must say I've been in France and it was a nice holiday there. It was nice to get in the real atmosphere of the Tour de France. It really lives amongst the French people. It was nice to watch the racing with some of these French people. And normally you always have this drain after the Tour, or the Tour de France for men is over, what's going to happen now, 1 week of waiting until San Sebastian. But for me, really, the Tour de France Femmes in connection with the men's tour, like the overlap of the last day and then this very natural connection into a week of exciting racing, it's been super nice in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just been really nice to tune in too. It's just very fun to watch women's racing. Very much reminds me of watching some of the junior races. It's just constantly action. And favorites going off the front, deciding races all by themselves. It's really enjoyable to watch. Certainly would recommend it.
Yeah, and it's of course good that the ASO has finally also seen the added value of the women's racing and decided to, under pressure of Zwift and also Christian Prudhomme, to actually organize this Tour de France for women. And the first day, well, on the Champs-Élysées, I kind of had the idea that there was not much attention, but that wasn't correct because the spectators were mainly hidden behind the trees. For some reason, they weren't allowed to come close to the fences. I don't know the reason why, but there were plenty of people there apparently. So that was good to see. And the first stage ended in a mass sprint won by Lorena Wiebes ahead of the cyclocross world champion Marianne Vos. And the day after, we got the classic putsch in the second stage, a real coup there by Trek Segafredo actually after the intermediate sprint when it was Elisa Balsamo who continued pacing, and that led to a breakaway of 6 riders, and there were 2 cyclocross riders in there.
Marianne Vos and Sylvia Persico, very attentive and managing to get into the deciding break. They kept pulling out more and more time and would sprint it out for victory.
Yeah, the finish was slightly uphill, and from that group, which included Longoborghini, Balsamo, who dropped in the final kilometer, Maaike van der Duin, who was tired. So basically, it was a sprint between the 4: Longoborghini, Vos, Persico, and Niewiadoma. Vos, of course, the fastest of that group, quite comfortably won that sprint and took the yellow jersey by winning the stage ahead of Sylvia Persico, the numbers 1 and 3 of the Cyclocross World Championships in Fayetteville, ending first and second in that stage. And for me, it was just amazing to see Vos win there. I mean, she's been at the highest level of the sport for such a long time. She's been written off, including by myself, I must say, and the advance of the previous cyclocross season. I had my doubts, but she managed to fire back there, and she's done it so many times already. And then she's able to win that stage, and she's one of the people who lobbied the hardest for Tour de France to happen. So, in my opinion, it's more than deserved that she got her stage win there, and that it's certainly good for women's cycling to have one of the leading names of the sport win a stage there and wear the yellow jersey for already 4 days now.
Yeah, it has been amazing. I think Marianne Vos, of course, putting herself there in an incredible situation where I think on that finish she was hard to beat anyway, but she made sure that she got rid of her biggest opponent, which would be Lorena Wiebes. And managing to grab the jersey. It's really nice to see how seriously this first big edition again of the Tour de France Femmes is getting so much attention, getting taken so seriously by the riders as well. Where sometimes we see with new races that the first few editions are not that prestigious in the history, like for example in Strade Bianche, and this is gonna be right up there, regardless of who wins.
Yeah, and as said, I thought the connection was super nice because it feels like a standalone event and not as a necessary, oh, well, we also need to do a women's race. I more get that feeling with, for instance, the Amstel Gold Race, where the women start before the men, they finish well before the men, their route is kind of a rip-off of the men's, they don't get to do the proper things, I feel like Flanders Classics has done this super well with the classics like Gent-Wevelgem and Tour Flanders, where the women now finish after the men because more people tune in for the men's race. That's unfortunately the reality. They tune in, but then once they see racing on their screen, they don't really care that it's women's racing, and then they're like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. There's more exciting racing. I'm going to stay watching. And now in this way, I feel like it's pretty well combined. Like, it's connected, so the attention draws over to the Tour de France Femmes, but at the same time, it's like broadcasted at prime time, and the viewing figures in the Netherlands are actually pretty good. They're not worse than for the men's race, and I know in France the numbers are a bit down, but still 2.5 million people watching on average. I think for the first or second stage, I think it was second stage, 2.5 million on average watching on France TV3 was pretty nice to see. So definitely good steps for the women's peloton, and of course there's been some critique, but maybe you can say a bit more about that critique that there's been and if that is justified.
I think the parkour it's quite good, I would say. It's been really nice to see what the women can work with in stage 2 and 3, for example. Not the biggest fan of the gravel stage, just don't love it all the time, especially like when they weren't really willing to race over it too much, which it's okay, but it's always unfortunate to see. But all in all, I'm looking forward to what's gonna happen mostly on Saturday and Sunday, where I wouldn't be too surprised if they start racing really early, especially on Saturday, and we're going to see an incredible GC overall.
Yeah, so the critique was that there was a time trial missing and that the gravel stage was not supposed to be there, and I think both are somewhat valid. I have no issue with gravel or cobbles in a Grand Tour or a stage race, but I think the gravel that they got on stage 4, which is yesterday once we're recording, it was too much. It was over a limit. These sectors 3 and 4, these were more mountain bike sections. I think if you're racing on a road bike, it's even more comfortable to do these early season cyclocross races in Bredene or not in Beringen, because those have massive rocks as well, but it was just too much. It's more something you could do on a mountain bike, and even then you could have a serious amount of punctures. So I would say that they would need to balance that a bit, and if you do gravel, okay, but do more Strade Bianchi gravel, which is better for tires. On the time trial, well, maybe that's missing, but I don't want to be too critical, because despite the ASO not being the savior of women's cycling, I think it's a good step, and we've seen quite entertaining racing. And I mean, after that stage that Vos won, Vos just kept continuing impressing, because she's never ended outside of the top 5. She's ended second, first, second, fifth, and third. So, yeah, pretty impressive if you ask me, Tom.
Yeah, it's been really impressive, and I think from the organizer's point of view, it just makes a lot of sense to not have a time trial. Like, you're already a bit worried that Annemiek van Vleuten is going to absolutely dominate the whole race and make it quite boring, and having a TT would just play into her hands. And of course, not every year has to have a TT if you're going to have only 8 stages.
Yeah, I would hope for next year maybe that they include a prologue on the Saturday and expand towards 9 stages, but it's not a deal breaker for me. If I focus purely on the racing, that second stage with that push in the end was pretty nice because it was classified as a flat stage. The third stage was also very entertaining. It went towards a hilly finish in Epernay, region where Julien Alaphilippe actually won the Tour stage in 2019 and took the yellow jersey. Exact same finish, and we went to an elite group towards the end with the GC riders and Vos, and then eventually on the finish it was a steep ramp. Vos got outsprinted by Célice Uttrup-Ludwig. I think, to be honest, on that finish there's nothing Vos could have done differently. I think Uttrup-Ludwig just timed it a bit better, but the speed with which she came indicated towards me that there was really no way Vos could have done anything anymore. Ludwig was just too strong on that finish. I don't know how you see that one.
Yeah, I think that was mostly really impressive from Ludwig, and yeah, Vos just, yeah, you just kind of look at it and I think you're happy with second place, because that was some really powerful stuff.
Yeah, it secured her position in the yellow jersey because she was dropped earlier by Silvia Persico. Persico, who is doing very well as well. We already mentioned that second place. She ended fourth in the third stage behind Ludwig and Vos, and then Moolman ended third. Very good by Persico. We must say Persico was already doing very well in the Giro Don, which was ridden during the men's Tour de France. In that Giro Don, Persico managed to end 7th in the general classification, got a couple of stage top 10s, even I think a top 5. She's been doing pretty good, but did you expect her to be able to carry over that form into the Tour de France Femmes? Because I have to say, despite knowing her talent, in our pre-season road podcast we already said, watch out for Persico this season, but this is above my expectations personally.
She keeps surprising me as well. I keep thinking like this is gonna be the end of Silvia Persico, or at least for example my Velo games, even though she was like only 8 points, which is really cheap on that. I didn't pick her because I didn't think like she could have another great stage race after she did really well in the Giro Don as well. And she's at it again. She is in the top 5 in GC with a nice advantage toward like the rest of some of the favorites already. Like she's already looking on for another top 10 again, and I'm not going to be too surprised if she manages to at least stick it out there. I expect her to drop like outside the top 5 probably, but yeah, she has been surprising me a lot this season, and she's continuing to do that at the Tour de France Femmes.
Yeah, I think a top 10 in GC is definitely possible. I can only agree with you because in the mountain stages in the Giro Don, she managed to stick her nose in the top 10 all the time. Only really lost a lot of time in a hilly stage on which Garcia, Cavalli, and Van Vleuten absolutely destroyed the rest. Put them off 5 minutes on something that everybody thought, oh well, this stage isn't going to be too difficult. It's hot, everybody wants a relaxed day. Well, that turned out differently, but definitely impressed by Persico, who managed to claim 2 more 7th places yesterday in the gravel stage. I don't think we can really say too much about it because, in terms of Vos and Persico, well, Persico tried one time, but it was obvious that she wasn't going to be dropping Vos, and then today 7th in the mass sprint. Definitely continuing this consistent streak. She's also very all-round because she can do basically everything. 7th in the mass sprint, 7th in the gravel stage, as said 10th in the mountain stages in the Giro Don. She's rumored to be moving to UAE next year together with 2 other riders of Valkar and one of the staff members. What do you think about the potential of this move?
I'm very excited for it. Already, like Volkar, it's a very good team, I think, to develop at, but she certainly is ready to take that next step, and I hope she's going to get plenty of opportunities. And at UAE, I think it's a very good one, with not too many big riders there already.
And what do you think this means for her potential to do cyclocross? Because she was third at the World Championships this year.
It worries me a little bit. I think she has clearly seen that she's very good on the road. So now it's just from a personal place. Do I still really want to do it? Do I still feel like I have something left to give in cyclocross? Hopefully UE will give her the opportunities to do it if she wants to. And hopefully we will keep seeing her in the field.
Yeah, UAE does ride on Colnago bikes. They're not that big anymore in cross. A couple of seasons ago, there were some teams racing on them. I think the Bauhaus team, but don't correct me on that one. Anyway, I think that indeed, as you said, it's going to be about personal preference. Does she want to ride cross? I think she does. I don't have the best connections with her, but I've spoken to her a couple of times. She does give me the impression to be very passionate about cross. It is her passion, so I don't think she will immediately abandon cross. And in women's cycling, it seems a bit more common to combine multiple disciplines anyway. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see her on a cross bike. And of course, it's still only rumors. So maybe after this Tour de France, there's another team knocking on the door with a bag of money which is bigger or with better support. So we don't know. But I think for a personal level for her, it's good to move to a World Tour team, probably with better staff, better potential, and indeed, as you said, UE doesn't have very big names. She would probably be one of the best riders of that team because Bastianelli is retiring. She would probably be the fastest sprinter, arguably the second best or even best climber depending on Maaike Bogaert, but Bogaert has this tendency to struggle a bit when it's about GC, so I think it's a good fit, but I would hope she moves elsewhere, not for the least because the ethics of the sponsor of UE, but that's all different discussion. There's been more cross riders racing here in the Tour de France Femmes. Shirin van Anrooy looks to be one of the contenders for the white jersey, which is for under 23 riders in the Tour de France Femmes. So far she's lost a bit of time. She's mainly been on domestiquing duties for Elisa Longo-Borghini, but once we come in the mountains it should be better for her. And then finally Julie de Wilde, racing for Planature Pura, also a cyclocross rider. What do you think of her performance in this Tour de France Femmes avec Swift, Twan?
I thought in the second stage she had a really good sprint. Of course, it was for the 6th place because that group in front was gone. But it was good to see her up there and to challenge. Well, she wasn't really challenging Lorena Wiebes all too much, but certainly beating Barbieri and Kopecky it's encouraging.
Yeah, I think it's good. We shouldn't forget that she had a pretty bad injury in Paris-Roubaix. She, I think, broke 2 bones in her back, which was not great, obviously. But bouncing back already with decent performances at the Belgian Championships and now a top 10 here, it's pretty good. I think in today's mass sprint, and I think which we also saw on the Champs-Élysées, is a bit of a positioning issue. They're using Sanne Kant as her lead out. Kant is doing a pretty good job in that, but at least from what I've seen, De Wilde still struggles to hold on to her wheel, and that's not strange. I mean, De Wilde, she's still 19 years old, which is super young. She turns 20 in December, so there's still time to learn, and it's definitely encouraging for Belgium that they seem to have a big talent on the road, because De Wilde signed for Ico Krelan a couple of seasons ago, and I was kind of surprised by that because she's always been more of a road talent in my opinion, especially when she ended second in the World Championships in Yorkshire. So that was juniors, by the way. So I definitely think it's very good what she's shown, and tomorrow stage 6 should kind of be her last opportunity to really do something, because the mountains, they will be too tough for her. Well, then let's still recap a bit of the Tour de France for men. The last time we recorded a podcast, Issam was on and we talked about the first 4 stages, mainly about Wout van Aert. Back then we already said that Van der Poel was struggling bad. That only continued. He was forced to retire, nothing really to be reported there. He said something went wrong on his altitude cam, probably burnt himself out, and that influenced his Tour de France. He's now doing post-tour crits and is targeting the Road World Championships. Leaves us with 2 big cyclocross stars racing there. One of them, Wout van Aert. Twan, where do we start with Wout van Aert ever since stage 4, because he has lit the race on fire?
Of course, we have to talk about the stage victory in Lausanne, managing to outsprint Michael Matthews and Tadej Pogacar.
Yeah, but is that really where we start? Because in stage 5 he arguably saves the Tour de France of Vingegaard. First he crashes, then he almost runs into the team car of DSM, then he's kind of scared and sits at the back of the pack. Then shit goes down in the Jumbo team, bike change goes horribly wrong for Vingegaard, he's 1 minute down. At some point they almost look at a deficit of 1 minute and 30 seconds, and then Van Aert drops back to the Vingegaard group and just starts storming in the yellow jersey, and then eventually, even at some point it looked like Pogacar was going to take over a minute, but Van Aert completely turned around that situation, and that, well, in the end the gap of the Tour de France win for Vingegaard was something like 2 minutes 40 or something, or even 3 minutes, but that could have dramatically changed the dynamics. The day after that he goes into a solo attack. He's been attacking almost every day and been decisive almost every day.
Yeah, he's had a lot of big days in the Tour de France. Yeah, indeed. Probably it should have been the 5th stage instead of the 8th stage. That should have been mentioned.
Yeah, but it's not because the 8th stage isn't impressive, but for me it feels like this 8th stage, oh well, he wins an uphill sprint. It's not that special.
And that is true. That is true. Saving the Tour de France for Jonas Vingegaard, it's it's a much bigger. It's just something. It's not necessarily a much bigger accomplishment, but it has much more importance in the whole story of the Tour de France. Whereas stage 8, when you're writing it out, you're writing down Wout van Aert wins.
And it's not because it's not impressive that he wins. It's just you expect it.
He is
He's
just
so
that
strong.
good.
There's just no opposition for him, because like if Prime Van der Poel would be here in his peak form, he could challenge. But for the rest, it's just like, okay, arguably Alaphilippe, he isn't there because he was injured. But like, it's not because it's not impressive. It's just like he's done so much, and then oh yeah, he wins this uphill sprint. Well, that was kind of expected.
Yes.
It was only 300 meters show of display, and it was still impressive because he was boxed in and needed to slalom towards victory. But all these other days, those were like, especially the cobble stage, you were like, what's going on? And then he turns around this lost situation. The day after that, he's constantly attacking in the beginning of the stage, and then he pulls out a solo, which wasn't the smartest in my opinion. I have my questions
Probably cost him yellow.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it was probably also only for one day. But so much has been done by him, because he wins 2 stages, basically secures the green jersey in that first week. And then after that, he goes on great domesticating duties, in my opinion. He's in the break almost every day, playing a satellite rider role on the Galibier. He's, I think, the 3rd to come over the top. And then he waits and is first carrying Vingegaard. Then he drops further back, brings back Roglic, does a bit of a pull, then sits up and rests. But I don't think he had a single bad day this Tour de France.
You could argue that maybe 19th stage or 21st stage, but indeed the stages that mattered, Wout van Aert was there. He was an absolute like rock for Vingegaard, just extremely dependable, just there whenever you wanted him. Rode him into the finish safely. In this stage they went to Foix, just made sure nothing was going on there. On the Hautacam he pulls him clear of Pogacar. Crazy.
Yeah, very, very crazy. Especially that pull on the Hautacam. That's one of the most insane things I have ever seen. And I mean, I'm not in cycling the longest, I've been consistently watching since 2011. I've done a bit of research on the older stuff in the zeros, 90s, but it's not the same. Ever since I started watching in 2010, 2011, what I saw there on the Hautacam, it was really something else. I'd never expected something like that of Wout van Aert. And I mean, it immediately sparked a debate in Belgium. Should Van Aert become a GC rider? I'll let you have your say on that first.
I don't think it's possible, just in a general theme of things. I do think if he really had wanted to this Tour de France, he could have taken the KOM jersey without exerting too much extra effort, which is quite insane to say. But yeah, all in all, he's an incredible rider, and I think he can keep on doing this for another 5-6 years, and that's a scary thing to say.
It is scary, and I indeed agree with you. I don't think it's possible for him to go for GC. He is 76 kilograms, has 6% body fat. There's no way he's going to drop any body fat to reduce weight. All he can do is drop muscle, and that will obviously affect his power output, so it won't increase his watt per kilogram, which is needed for the mountainous terrain. And then you can still say, yes, but he dropped Pogacar. Correct, but that Hautacam performance was not representative for his climbing performance throughout the entire Tour de France. He's taken a couple of rest days, he's done some pulls and dropped back a couple of other times and really rested for the last 1 or 2 climbs of the stage. So despite it being very impressive, Wout van Aert for GC, I don't think it's going to happen unless the ASO somehow puts together a Tour de France course with a lot of time trials, because we'll come to the time trial a bit later, not many summit finishes, and also a first week in which Van Aert can do crazy things like he did on stage 4, get the cobble stage, which he can take a lot of time. Only then I can see Van Aert potentially challenge for a GC podium. Top 10 if he wants, that's a different story, but I don't see why you would risk everything for a GC top 10 when you can be one of the best riders in the world at almost everything.
Yeah, I think even a top 5 maybe is possible, but if we look at the TT that he won in Rocamadour, like, Geraint Thomas is the furthest away from the podium, like, from the three podium riders, and he only loses 32 seconds, and this is already on a TT of 40 kilometers. Like, even if we put in a lot of time trial kilometers, he loses that so quickly on just one of the mountain finishes where it doesn't quite pan out, because the Hautacam Day is a true exception in cycling. Like, if you look at just the whole day of what he did there, it's absolutely insane. You just can't be doing that every day.
That was ridiculous. Pulling, like, in the beginning of the stage, trying to get in the break, doing a bit of work on the Albisque, then pulling up the Sprandel, and then pulling almost the entire Hautacam. Like, I was really left for words when I was watching that. And yeah, I agree. The climbers he's facing are too good of a TTers to really lose too much time. There's no Quintana type who is the best climber that you can say, well, you take 4 minutes in the time trial, 1 minute per 10 kilometers, 10 seconds or 6 seconds per kilometer. That's not happening those days. That the best GC riders couldn't time trial, like Delgado. Those days are gone, at least for now. So yeah, it will probably be tough, but we also shouldn't spend too much time on it because he's been doing very well in the other stages. He I think still managed the second in Carcassonne in a reduced sprint. Really won the green jersey with ease. I think he let go in the last stage on the Champs-Élysées because he said he had a bit of decompression, and his tour was already complete. I think that also played a role, because in stage 19 he even said that he was going to let his teammate Christophe Laporte have a shot at the win because of all the lead out work he'd done. So this is really a sign of not only a good rider, in my opinion, also a good people's manager, because he can keep his teammates satisfied like this. Laporte has now gotten his first World Tour win thanks to Van Aert in Paris-Nice. He's gotten his first Tour de France stage win this year thanks to a bit of help of Van Aert, and Van Aert saying, you go for it. And this is really a way that you can keep a very great connection with one of your most important domestiques, and that will only strengthen their partnership in races as well.
Yeah, and it just shows one of the most dominant teams we have ever seen in the Tour de France.
Yeah, also, of course, Laporte was strong and that plays a role, but in my opinion, it's a great gesture by Van Aert to say, okay, Laporte, Christophe, you can go for the win. And the day after in the time trial, Van Aert admitted that Vingegaard almost did the same. Vingegaard, once he knew that the Tour win was in the bag, nothing going to happen against Pogacar, Vingegaard took it easy on the final climb in order to give Van Aert the stage win as a thank you to all the hard work that Van Aert had done for Vingegaard. So I also think that shows something about Vingegaard. We know he's a humble guy, but it also shows more of this real team spirit inside Jumbo-Visma and this great people's management.
We got what I wanted on the Hautacam. We got me the stage victory in the yellow jersey, and I'm do you the favor as well on the team and the time trial of not pushing all the way to the end and make it incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I think it, as said, was very nice to see, and Van Aert can look back on a very successful tour. He was for a minute down to race San Sebastian, but he said that he wasn't going to start because of a cold. I think it was more of a tiredness because I've seen him at the post-tour crit. There was one on Monday in Aalst, which he skipped. Then I saw him in the post-tour crit in Roeselare on Tuesday. He got flown in by helicopter, actually, from the Jumbo-Visma service course. He looked jackhammered, man. He was so tired. And today he was racing in his own village in Herentals. He won there in front of 40,000 people at least. He's probably just tired, in my opinion, and going to take a rest towards the World Championships.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Of course, he really wants to add that world title, maybe start building fitness toward Lombardia as well, because after seeing that Hautacam performance, no one's going to tell me that he can't win that. So it will be an interesting end of the season for Wout van Aert.
Yeah, I hope to see him in prime form against Mathieu van der Poel at the World Championships. Hopefully a proper battle, not like we had last year at the Worlds. Will be amazing to see. Somebody who's also eyeing those World Championships is Tom Pidcock, but he's going for the Triple Crown. He's going to do the Mountain Bike World Championships first, but also he had a very successful tour because he was doing well in GC, but after he had a bit of a tough day on the Galibier and Granon, he, well, bounced back the day after. He went in the break with a very fabulous downhill attack. That was something else as well. That was also amazing to watch, his downhill of the Galibier.
That was really nice. So of course, you've seen plenty of the descending skills of Pidcock already, but it's always nice to see it on such alpine climbs. It's really calming in a way.
I can tell you, if you're downhilling there, it's not that calming. Probably, no, it's not even your heart is pounding like crazy, but it gives you this mega adrenaline rush. And for Pidcock, apparently that rush carried on towards the rest of the stage, because over the Croix de Fer, he looked to be the strongest, and then on the Alpe d'Huez, he dropped the rest of his breakaway opposition and claimed victory up on Alpe d'Huez. Really fantastic to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was really impressive. I mean, we knew Pidcock could climb. Like, he won the baby Giro, but we really had yet to see it properly in World Tour level, and to see it like that, to see him stay in GC for so long, and to see him climbing that well, it was really nice to see, and hopefully we get more of that in the future.
I think it's definitely possible. In the rest of the tour, he was a bit anonymous, dropped out of the top 10 of GC in the Pyrenees. No shame in that. I mean, it's his first Grand Tour that he contests at a proper level. Last year in the Vuelta, he was invisible, only using it as a training race for the World Championships. Even saw on his Strava that he did interval trainings during climbs there, which is something I've never seen before. So it's no shame, he can still learn. I think there's definitely top 10 potential in him, as we've already seen now. Ended second in the white jersey classification. Once Pogacar moves out there after next year, I definitely think he is the next in line to challenge for that jersey. Of course, other talents coming through as well, but it was pretty amazing to see. Well, then I think we've covered the men's Tour de France, bit of a short recap of our thoughts on that, and the beginning of the women's Tour de France. Twan, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
There's still some racing coming up. Of course, the Tour de France Femmes continues, but we're going to be taking another holiday for a while, so it will be, I think, a couple of weeks before we're back, but there's not that much happening. We'll probably be back around some of the mountain bike World Cups, mountain bike World Championships. So see you guys then. Goodbye.